Hello, hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Juliana Page here, and I have an interesting message. So I had the opportunity today to be updating a website for a private foundation that I'm a part of, which is really interesting because, of course, I'm updating high-profile bios of people that have done amazing things in the world. But I also had to include my own bio. And I found this really interesting, and it was a learning moment. So I want to give that moment to you. I was sitting there and I had started by copying and pasting my own bio to see if there's anything to tweak from, the past 5 years of what I've been doing. And it was wild because I had totally forgot or not brought it to remembrance recently, or it's just not part of my daily experience. But I genuinely was not thinking about how my life was even 6 years ago and what I was doing prior to working at this nonprofit private foundation, right? And I was thinking, and I'm like, man, I was leading high performance teams and facilitating dynamic corporate trainings to develop emerging leaders and really create massive impact, right? That this company was after. And I, for some reason, totally forgot that was part of my experience. Just was not even aware because it was wild. And so my question or my invitation to you is, one, don't despise small beginnings, right? And then also open your eyes. And what do I mean by that? I mean, open your eyes of faith. So what this did for me today is it had me think, wow, the things that have been happening in my life story, strangely enough, haven't been what I'm necessarily trained at, what I am feeling like I'm prepared for at the time. They are unknown. They are big risks, in my opinion, and they require my yes and just my courage to say yes and figure it out in the doing. So that in itself is a nugget of wisdom for you. But in this case, for example, my undergraduate degree is in journalism and economics management, okay? And then my graduate degree is in film production, and I am professionally certified as a life coach and strategist and, have other certifications too. But that's not, being a corporate trainer was not part of the plan for me. That's not what I dreamt about. That's not what I expected. It's just something that I said yes to. And then also moving into a foundation was not on my vision board, my Pinterest feed, right? It wasn't anywhere, but I am an activist at heart to champion the underdog in a lot of causes that definitely need massive action on them, right? And other reformers working together, and that's appealing to me, but I never maybe considered myself that way. So why do I share this? I share this because it's important that if you are ever going to look back in your life story, to not despise small beginnings and where you came from, but look back and see how God has brought you to where you are today, how he's developed you. What are the common themes? What are you learning? How are you growing? How are you stretching? What does that even look like? So for example, today, how did this bring me and help close the gap from where I was to where I am? Well, I was somebody who used to consider myself as very introverted, meaning I like being away from large crowds. I'm not somebody that loves happy hours with a bunch of busyness. It's never been my thing. I would much rather journal, have total silence, no TV on, no music, just unwind, get out in nature. Very different. Like, I'm okay having solo experiences. I don't get lonely necessarily or feel like I'm missing out or get FOMO, right? Like, that doesn't really happen for me. Like, I have a huge sense of adventure, but it's different. My adventures are different, right? So combine that with being, I think I was an INFJ for a long time, and now I'm an INFP. And I've kind of changed. It's been bizarre. But basically, I was doing very behind the scenes like things. And so all of this development was teaching me how to get results, how to coach people into their greatness, how to see people where they can be versus where they are, how to call out greatness versus talk down to people, how to lead by example, by modeling the way, right? How to remain calm, cool, and collected on the surface, but behind the scenes, you're taking massive action that nobody knows about and nobody's giving you credit for, right? How to speak and present information in a way that is energizing, it's dynamic, it's able to be received. All of these things, their skills, their gifts, their art, getting exposed to a lot of causes and how to manage their effectiveness and how to scale them. These are all things that are wild and part of development for where I'm going, okay? But if I didn't have that God view, I might see it all as random. I might still get stuck in this space of being like, wow, I'm still not where I want to be. Like, when is this ever going to change, right? So my encouragement on today is to invite you to take a look back at where you've been. What are different experiences that you've had that have led you to where you are today? What were common themes? Common themes for me have been communication, it's been expression, it's been self-mastery, it's been mindset, it's been transformation work, it's been recovery work, it's been healing work, it's been habits and really activating high performance habits. It's been leadership and even how to submit to leadership that you don't necessarily agree with. It's how to activate faith when your circumstances look nothing like it and be a person of faith that other people can look up to as an example. Like, just wild things. But if you look back, you will see themes. If you use your eyes of faith, you will see it from God's eyes, from God's perspective about how he provided for you, how he was faithful, how he developed you, how he got the fruit of the Spirit out of you, whether he was developing patience, self-control, meekness, right? Like, just check it out is all I'm saying. Just check it out. It is wild and it will encourage you as far as where you're headed. Okay. So for example, all of that was encouraging me and building me up to be a speaker, to be a content creator, to be an author, to be all these beautiful things, right? But there's a lot of process and a lot of development, which is also what I want you to see. It's not like a microwave quick fix thing, because your capacity's got to change. All right. So I believe too, it was Joyce Meyer that said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. So just take a look. I'm just saying, it'll be interesting what comes up for you. Now, how do you also know, what's key about this example too, is how do you know when it's time for a change? When it's time for a change. So whether it was running my own business, whether it was shifting into corporate, which was a really whack move, going from owning your own business to going to corporate America, it's usually the other way around. Wild. When you go with God, by the way, it never looks like what you plan for. I'm just saying. It's better though. Okay, so, and sometimes, side note, sometimes we don't know what we need. We just think about what we want. Okay? But God is about your purpose and about your destiny. So it's a little bit different in how it unfolds. All right. So anyway, from owning my own business to going into corporate to then going into nonprofit to then launching other independent businesses, just wild stuff. But anytime one of those big shifts happened that seemed out of nowhere to anybody that's on the outside, right? It will always look out of nowhere to everybody else who doesn't know you and your relationship with God. Nobody else can know that like you. So don't move for the approval of man, basically. But at any rate, anytime one of those moves happened, I was feeling this, I call it angst, but I was feeling that there's something more, like something's got to give because this isn't working out anymore. Okay. So I have 3 insights, 3 ways to really identify that it is time for a change. Number 1 is that your capacity is shrinking, but your calling is expanding. Okay. Your capacity is shrinking, but your calling is expanding. Okay. So while working at this nonprofit, I was feeling like, man, I'm giving nonstop hours to this. I don't have time to take care of myself anymore. Again, a choice, but it was consuming me. And I wasn't, investing in things that made so much sense to me or provided so much value to me or just gave me so much alignment, right? Like I just felt so aligned when I was doing these other things that now weren't happening, whether that was serving in ministry, whether that was having more quiet time and prayer time, whether that was writing books, whatever it was. I was getting to a point where I was not even balancing my daily life habits well. And so strangely enough, that's when an opportunity came which was interesting because it seemed small. It seemed like it was going to take more effort, and it did initially. But because of the way I built it, it ended up changing my mindset. It ended up changing my self-control, my discipline. It changed my life habits. It changed who I surrounded myself by and what I tolerated and accepted and what was no longer okay. So my calling was expanding, even though I felt in this work environment that I was shrinking. Okay. So that's number one sign that you know it's time to make a move. Number two is when fear is overwhelming, but faith is unrelenting. So there's this fear of what's going to happen if, or if I leave this thing and then I don't have a plan, or then, you know, like you just get caught up in scarcity thinking or trying to make a way for yourself and come up with your own plan. And that is overwhelming because all it takes is one thought and then you're down a whole rabbit hole. But faith is unrelenting. So just as much as the fear comes up, the faith is activated and the faith kicks in and takes over. So faith sounds like God's in control. God has already provided a way. So it just literally, it's like throwing water on the fire and just putting the fire out constantly. But your faith is activated so that your faith is getting stronger. And that's also how you know that you're being shifted into more. Okay. And then number three is your passion is burning, but peace is calling. Your passion is burning, but peace is calling. And what does that mean? It means that you've got the vision, you've got these big dreams, you got these big ideas. At one point, that was for me to write a book, which was never something that I ever considered. People had come and told me to do that, but it was never something that I even aspired to do. That sounded like punishment to me at one season of my life. But there was peace anytime that I would do that activity. It would just flow. Very bizarre. I had never had that experience before. And also, I knew that peace would come from aligning with God. Peace would come from quiet time and being still and knowing who's in control. It would come from that alignment because being in the will of God is the safest place to be, right? So although this passion was burning, I knew that it was too big for me to handle on my own. And that's how I also knew that it was God. Anything that's usually scary is a God thing, and you run at it. And God provides the details. Usually it's just one step at a time, but he keeps you in a peaceful state, right? God will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is fixed on him or stayed on him, right? So that's the key. So hopefully this helps you a little bit. I think I'm sharing this example with you because I think it's important to note that you can't teach what you don't possess. So if your capacity has not been developed, you can't go to this next level and teach and bring the breakthrough and bring the advancement and bring the change and bring the transformation that you're probably about unless you carry that yourself, unless you've broken through yourself, unless you've learned it yourself, unless you've experienced it yourself, unless you've walked through it yourself, unless you've trained it for yourself. You can't necessarily unlock that for somebody else. So let that be motivation to take a look at your story and see how have you been trained? How have you been developed? How has God wired you? How has he been leading you? How has he been developing you? How has he been preparing you? How is he doing that even now? And how does that make a whole heck of a lot of supernatural sense, not necessarily common sense, but supernatural sense about where you're headed? Because that will activate more faith. That will bring this conviction and this knowing that you need for when circumstances don't line up with what you know, for when things seem out of whack, but you just know that God's got it and he's taking you somewhere. And when the time is right, he's going to make it happen. Okay? So these are keys to know that it's time to make a move. When your capacity is shrinking, but your calling is expanding. When fear is overwhelming, but faith is unrelenting. And when your passion is burning, but peace is calling. So if you're experiencing these, let this be confirmation that there is more for you, that you are being prepared, and that when the time is right, God will make it happen. And I encourage you to just take a look. Take a look at how God has been faithful. What are your testimonies? Even write them down on paper for the times when you need them most. Okay? And if you want more encouragement, if you want more information about things like this, you can visit julianapage.com. You can also follow me on IG at Miss Juliana Page. And until next time, guys, stay blessed.